What in the wide world of Triumph is this? The 2023 Rocket 3R? Oh, yes, please. All right, here we are. I've been waiting a long time to do this review, and I am so happy that you've joined me with it. This is the 2023 Triumph Rocket 3R. Take a look at this thing. It's a thing of beauty, eh? Triumph sticking to its cues from the old bike with the dual bug headlights. Take a look at this bike, though. There's nothing grandpa about this thing. This is the racing edition, if you will, the R edition of the Rocket 3. So I drove the first generation of this, and I was like, okay, I like what you're doing, Triumph. But they have injected steroids into this thing, and it's insane. Dual Brimbos in the front. You got a 17-inch tire in the front. This is a 150/80. This is a 2,500cc motor, 2,456 cc's to be exact, I believe. Exhaust coming out the side. Unbelievable tone on this bike. When I start it up and get on it, you'll see what I'm saying. And in the back with this one as well, we've got a 16-inch, and it's a 240/50. Take a look at this thing. Look at how massive that thing is. My hand doesn't even fit on it. I can't even imagine how much that would cost, but this is going to keep this bike planted mighty nice. BMW GS-esque mud flap, which is kind of a weird design, but they do that to keep the back spray from coming off, and of course it mounts everything with tail lights and license plate. There is a third exhaust outlet on this side, so it's single-sided on one side, and then a triple ducts out the other side, which is cool. Your air intake is on this side as well. All the electronics and wires are completely hidden. Transmission is down below. It's a cool bike. It is a cool looking bike. Little bar and mirrors. And of course, the TFT that Triumph uses is quite intuitive, and they're using this on pretty much all their models except the Tigers. So let's fire her up, shall we? I've been riding this bike for a couple minutes, and I don't know what to tell you. This bike is insane. The power that this bike has for such a large beast is unnatural, okay? I rode the GT edition, and I thought, this is cool. But this bike loses the windshield, has a little bit more forward stance on the handlebars, and mid-mount controls, which is fantastic. It's everything I wanted in the other bike, but it didn't have it. Oh, and just to let you know, the exhaust note on this one is even more pleasant. Oh, look, it's already in sport mode. Good girl. This bike, I'm telling you, I don't know. I don't know if there's a faster bike out there. Definitely not in the cruiser market. Unless you get into a sport bike, there's nothing that's going to touch this. Do you understand the power this thing has? I mean, you're going to end up in there if you're not careful. It has launch control on it, because if you didn't, this thing would just wheelie out. But it's a short wheelbase, and the bike has a ton of power right off the line too. So for specs, you're like almost 165 horse, I believe, and I think it's 163 foot-pounds of torque. It's they're neck and neck with each other. And because this bike has so much torque down low, I can turn 2,000 RPMs and just roll on. Now, granted, the power curve on this bike is slightly different than the GT that I rode. The GT seemed to have a little bit more snap down low, but it tailed off pretty quick. This bike, the red line is actually 250 RPMs more than the other motor. And I mean, I'm holding on. I can't, I know the GoPro doesn't do it any justice, but I'm telling you, this bike has ungodly amounts of power. And it sounds angry. It's like the 5-finger death punch right in your face. It's unbelievable. Now, here's where everything comes to a head with this bike. It handles. This bike handles because of its tires. Being so wide, it has so much surface area to contact. Comparing this to like the Street Bob, because I think the Street Bob or even the Fat Bob are similar in nature to this bike in the size and configuration. Those bikes can't handle very well at all. I'm not trying to make enemies here, but those bikes, they don't steer very well. You really have to lay into it. This bike, you don't have to do that. This bike it's all over. I mean, it's just ready to go. And with the power that this bike has, with the large tires, you can really do good things. The burble on the exhaust is fantastic. Ready? I'm not gonna lie, this bike, when you get this bike, they immediately give you a driving record with speeding tickets, because that's what's gonna happen. I don't think I could own this bike. I think it would just be too tempting to spank it nonstop. The noise that this bike makes wants you to play with it more, and it's got power. I mean, look at the tack on this. I don't know if you can see it. Let me tip this up. See, tiltable, so in case you're getting a glare. The tack on this, I'm in the 2000 band. I'm 2500, and it's into power right there. It's already into power. So this, to me, this even has more low-end torque than some of the V-twins I've ridden. And again, it handles, it stops, it has power that goes throughout the entire band as well. So again, with this engine's bigger than most economy 4-cylinders, okay? So when you think about it in terms like that, this bike with that displacement, they're using it, it's making power. It's more miles per gallon, let me tell you. Now, speaking of miles per gallon, I've been watching the range on this, and this is a full tank. I left with 170, and I've been riding for a few miles on this. It's gone down to like 145. So on a full tank of gas, don't expect much more than 150 unless you're really driving like a grandpa. As far as suspension goes on this, and I'm comparing this over to the GT, the suspension on this is a lot harsher. See what I'm talking about? It's pretty harsh on these bumps because they're going after the sport riding on this model. And versus the Grand Tour, the GT is a little bit plusher. This is a little less money. I think this one comes in like 23,000 versus the GT. But you only have manual adjustment on the suspension, so you can set this for your riding style and weight, and then forget about it. You're not going to change it on the fly electronically, which is fine. I mean, I don't really know of many cruisers that do that until you start getting into more technical adventure bikes. I really do like the matte finish on this too. It's not super shiny, but Triumph is really big on having all of their bling different colors. So it's like a stainless, a brushed aluminum, then we've got a shiny aluminum up here, and then we even have like a bead blasted aluminum on the forks. And I kind of wish they would just go with a single matte finish. If this thing was completely murdered out black, I think it would actually look really cool. But it sounds cool, and people aren't really going to see you very long because it's so fast. You're just going to take off. One thing I noticed though on these bikes too is the front end does have a little bit of a shimmy shake. So I would try to retrofit a steering damper into one of these. And you might say, oh, a steering damper on a cruiser, that's sacrilege. But this bike is really, you know what it is? It's like if you had like a bodybuilder who was a midget and he decided to show up and wrestle in like a kids competition. That's what this bike is like. I know that's completely weird to say, but this thing is just, it doesn't belong in the category with other cruisers. It's just too fast. This guy behind me, I was talking to him about this bike too, and he thought it was crazy. Yeah, this bike having a little fly screen here just to protect the electronics is cool, because it gives you the more naked look. And that's what I was looking at the GT. I thought, man, this bike would be awesome. Lose the screen, and sure enough, here we are. I mean, it's awesome. I also really like the mid-mount controls on this. The forward controls were a little bit better for comfort, okay? So I'm a little bit cramped up. I'm 6'4" with a 34-inch inseam, which is a ginormous individual, I understand. But the forward controls seem to be a little bit better than this one. It seems like they do a little bit better job being down underneath me as far as the sport appeal. Watch this. I mean, this bike is just it has so much power. It reminds me of one of those bikes that the people put car motors in just to do something. And look at it, handles. That's the problem. You get into trouble with this bike. You know what they say, temptation is an evil mistress. Man. The bike handles, it's got a ton of grunt and power, and you're in a sporty riding position. This has got to be Triumph's fastest bike. I'm going to throw that down right now. Whoa, hold on. Except for their street bikes, because I know the Speed Triple 1000RR is a weapon. But out of their, standard motorcycles and even their ADV bikes, this bike would eat those for lunch and then have leftovers for tomorrow's breakfast. Unless you go up against a street bike with this bike, I really don't think there's too many bikes that are actually going to be able to touch it and stay with it too. Because like I said, this bike handles really, really well. For those wide tires, I cannot believe how well I can flick this thing around. It doesn't seem normal. It doesn't seem like it should be that way. The wider the tire, the harder it is to push, right? Not with this bike. Not at all. Launch time. Wow. Wow. Yeah, guy. This bike is just fast. Now, just so you don't think I'm like being paid to say everything good about Triumph. I love Triumphs, you know that. I've owned several. They just make a nice bike. I like the overall package. I wish this bike was a little bit more comfortable, not necessarily on the suspension, but even on the seat, because I do feel like I'm riding a sport bike on this, and I couldn't see myself taking this bike for a long poke, because it's just not comfortable enough. It's just not comfortable. It's good though, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this bike is uncomfortable. I'm gonna ride one of the street triples in a little bit, and I will be telling you that those are awful for comfort. But for this bike, perfect riding position for a sporty. I mean, there's so much to love about it. All right, well, that's this video. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate your subscription on the channel. If you have anything to say, please leave me a comment down below. As always, ride safe.